Hey, in this video, you're going to love this because I'm going to talk about responsibility. Responsibility in life is very important, no matter what you do. The person who's more responsible usually makes more money, has better relationships, has better people around them, and they just feel more confident. Okay, responsibility is a key. So in this video, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to learn exactly how to get responsibility from people that are very successful already. So let's dive in. Let's go into my office and I'll see you on the inside. Take care. All right, welcome back. In this short video, I'm going to be giving you some really core values on responsibility, and also you're going to be learning about planning, what your belief is, and why you are able to be successful in anything you do. Since there are certain quotes I picked up for some of the best and most motivational speakers you've ever heard of, and here we go. The core habit, okay, the core values of extreme ownership. Take 100% responsibility of where you are in life, whether you're successful or failure. You have to take responsibility 100% of the time. Don't be a victim. Because here's the thing. Once people stop making excuses and stop blaming others, take ownership of everything in their life, they're compelled to take action to solve their problems. This comes from Jocko Willink, one of the best speakers ever. Among the most important personal choices you can make is to accept complete responsibility for everything you are and everything you will ever be. This is a great turning point because here's the thing. Acceptance of a personal responsibility is what separates superior person from the average. Personal responsibility is the preeminent of a trait of a leader and wellspring of a high performance in every person in every situation. What we're trying to say is that if it's to be, it's up to me. Say that to yourself. Accepting complete responsibility for your life means that you refuse to make excuses or blame others or other things for that matter for anything in your life that you're not happy about, like blaming the economy, blaming the interest rates, blaming the government. Can you control those things that I just mentioned? No. Why not blame the things you can control? Wow, isn't that a genius thought? Blame the things you can control because guess what? You can make a change. Because when you blame things that you cannot control, you are a victim. Or people might say, you know what, I wasn't born with a lot of money. Change it. Or they might say, you know what, my parents never taught me this. Change it. Or they might say that, I've always come from a poor neighborhood. Change it. You refuse from this moment forward to criticize others for any reason. You refuse to complain about your situation or about what has happened in you in the past. The past cannot affect your future. Think about it. Can you change the past? Of course not. But you can learn from the past, modify your actions to take a better future. I'll give you an example. There was once a dog sitting in a porch down in Tennessee, and he was howling. He was hurt. He was in pain. And he was just sitting there. Ow. And the neighbor said, "Why is your dog howling like that? What's the matter?" "Oh, he's sitting on a nail." "Oh boy, why doesn't he get out of there?" And this is what the neighbor said. "It doesn't hurt him bad enough." Wow, think about it. So your threshold of pain, you put up with things, and then you complain. So he was complaining, but he didn't want to take action. It wasn't hurting bad enough. So do you have to wait till things get even worse for you to take action? Think about it, right? Take action now when it's not that bad. I have a saying here, dig your well before you're thirsty. Well, W-E-L-L. In other words, build a well or dig a well before you're thirsty. Think about it. Do you put on a seatbelt when you're just about to crash? No, you put it on before you start your car or before you start moving, at least, hopefully. Why do you do that? Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're not responsible. Responsible people take action. One of the key things you could be responsible is in your finances. How many of you have take 10% of your income and store it away? Act as if you never even made that 10%. Guess what happens? You build profitability even in your job. I've talked to people many times over the years in my career in business management and in direct sales, and one of the things we look for is their finances. And one of the big questions I ask is, how long have you been working? And most people, let's say if they're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, they've been working at least 10, 20, 30 years. And I want you to write this down on a piece of paper and look at this. This will tell you if you're responsible on your finances. This example, you're going to love this. Take your number of income, the amount of income you're making on an annual basis. Let's say the last year. Let's just take a number, $50,000. Okay, not a lot of money, $50,000. For some people, it is a lot of money. But let's just say the average household American makes about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Excuse me. So let's just say you write that down. Let's say in the last 10 years, you made $50,000 per year. Now, I understand your first year in getting a job, you weren't maybe making that much. Okay, but maybe now you're making $100,000 a year. But I'm just going to use $50,000 as an example. Let's do the math here. So you have $50,000 times 10. What does that give you? $500,000. $500,000 has passed through your household in the last 10 years in this example, right? So $10,000 a year, $500,000 in 10 years. If you were living on 90% of that income, in other words, your rent or your mortgage and all your bills were paid from 90% of that income, that would be $450,000 that you would have spent on expenses and living expenses, right? And 10% would have been $50,000 left. 500,000 minus 450,000. You should have $50,000 in the bank. I know most of you listening here don't have that, okay? That's because you didn't treat your income, the first 10% of your income, as your profit. You have to look at yourself as a company that you're responsible for finance. And from this point forward, if you don't take anything from this video, take this, is take 10%, or if you can't do 10%, take 5% moving forward and act as if you never made that 5%. So next time you get paid from your boss, you make $2,000 in a week, whatever your income is, act as if you only made 90% of that income. If that's after taxes, put that 5% or 10% away and in a savings account that you're not going to touch. What's going to happen is over the time you're going to start building momentum, and what happens is that money attracts money. When you see in your bank a year from now, when you're saving, let's just say 10% of $5,000 liquid cash in your bank, how are you going to feel? Think about it. If you had $5,000 saved right now, okay, if you were making $50,000 a year and you have $5,000 saved just from your job, how would that make you feel? Wouldn't you feel a little more relaxed? Because God forbid you run out of your job or your income, you have some staying capital. They once interviewed Lamar Hunt. I don't know if you know the Hunt family. They're like multi hundreds of millions of dollars. They're worth probably in today's times they would be worth billions of dollars. Okay, and one of the reporters interviewed J. Lamar Hunt, and one of his companies was losing $1 million a year. They were losing $1 million, and he didn't look worried. So the reporter asked him, "Hey, Mr. Hunt, we found out that one of your companies is losing $1 million a year. You don't seem, agitated or nervous about it." And he says that's too darn bad with his southern accent. He says, "I guess I'm going to be broke for in 300 years from now." Think about it. That's called staying power, right? So, in other words, if you have a mindset that you are responsible, you will do what it takes to secure your finances. Do that. You'll see a big difference. Let's look at a few more quotes that I got. One of the big quotes is what Brian Tracy says. This decision to accept responsibility for your life, your results, is with no excuses. It's absolutely essential for you to double your income and double your time off from your work. From now on, no matter what happens, say to yourself, I am responsible, even if it's not your fault. Think about what I just said. I am responsible even if something happens to you and it's not your fault. That is maturity, because here's an example. I heard that UPS drivers, if they ever get in an accident, even if it's not their fault, they're probably going to get fired. Did you know that? And that's because they put themselves in a position that they shouldn't have been there. That's what their supervisors say. So look at it this way. When you take that much responsibility on yourself, you look at what can happen, you can do if things go wrong and you're secure. Like just like putting on the seatbelt. What happens if your brakes fail and you slam into a tree? Well, you got the seatbelt on, you got the airbag, you got something you've done to make sure that you are a responsible person. Look at the word responsibility. Look at that. Write it down. The first part of the word is response. The second part of the word is ability. The ability to choose your response. Highly proactive people recognize that responsibility, they do not blame circumstances or conditions of their behavior even. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choice based on values rather than a product of their conditions based on their feeling. Stephen Covey said that. One last thought, and then we're going to part, friends. It's time to stop looking outside yourself for the answers on why you haven't created the life and the results you want. For it's you who create the quality of life. You lead the results you produce, you, no one else. To achieve major success in life, to achieve those things that are most important to you, you must assume 100% of the responsibility for your life, nothing else. Jack Canfield. This is Ash Ali signing off. Make it a great day. You are the best. Take care.